This is StoryBeat, Storytellers on Storytelling, an exploration into how master storytellers and artists develop and build brilliant stories and works of art that people everywhere love and admire. So join us as we discover how talented creators of all kinds find success in the worlds of imagination and entertainment. Here now is your host, Steve Cuden.
Thanks for joining us on StoryBeat. We're coming to you from the Center for Media Innovation on the campus of Point Park University in the heart of downtown Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. If you like this podcast, please take a moment to give us a rating or review on whatever app or platform you're listening to. Your support helps us bring more great StoryBeat episodes to you. My guest today, the greatly revered actor and lifelong Pittsburgher Wali Jamal, was born and raised along the Monongahela River. While being educated in the Southside Catholic School Consolidation, Wali's acting talents were first revealed. In the 7th grade, there was a reading of H.G. Wells's The Invisible Man in play form. Wali, the only black kid in an all-white school, was assigned the lead role of the Invisible Man, the scientist, Griffin, who made himself invisible. The word irony was unknown to Wali at the time. At play's end, his teacher, Mrs. Cavalieri, stated simply, "Wali, you're an actor." But he had no resources to pursue acting, so he made himself useful as a skilled laborer, electrical, plumbing, maintenance in general. His acting career would be put on hold for the next 20-odd years. In his late 20s, still feeling the need to perform, Wali took to the stand-up comedy stages in the Pittsburgh nightclub scene in the late 80s, still hoping to become a professional actor. In the 90s, he found out about an audition at Kuntu Repertory Theater on the University of Pittsburgh campus. He walked in unknown, walked out with the lead role, and henceforth has been performing on nearly every theater stage in the city of Pittsburgh, including City Theater, Pittsburgh Playwrights Theater, New Horizons, Bricolage, Barebones, South Park, Stage 62, Pittsburgh Public Theater, Front Porch Theatricals, and his own theater enterprise, History's Flipside. Once named by the late, great Bill Nunn as the August Wilson Soldier, Wali Jamal has performed in all 10 of August Wilson's American Century Cycle. After performing in Wilson's 11th play, the one-man show, How I Learned What I Learned, Wali has become the only actor in the world to have performed in all 11 of August Wilson's plays. That means that of the 5 actors who have performed the one-man show, Wali is the only one to have the extraordinary distinction of performing in all 10 plays of the American Century Cycle. Wali will be performing his one-man show, How I Learned What I Learned, on April 20th, 2019, here in Pittsburgh at the beautiful August Wilson African American Cultural Center. And the theater group Saints and Poets is taking the show to the Fringe Festival in Edinburgh, Scotland in August 2019. If you can, please do check out Wali's one-man tour de force in How I Learned What I Learned. It is my true honor and a great pleasure for me to welcome the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette's 2018 Performer of the Year, Wali Jamal, to StoryBeat today. Wali, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Such a great gift to have you here today. So you've been at this acting game for quite some time now. Obviously, we already said you started in the 7th grade. At that time when that bug first bit you, did you know all the way back then that this was something you really wanted to do?
I actually knew before then.
Really?
I wanted to be an actor from when I could first talk, when I would be ready for school in the morning. We'd have our little breakfast cereals, and I'd be the one reading the box like a game show host or a radio announcer.
Did you get that from listening to radio and watching TV?
I sure did.
And so you're trying to emulate that?
Oh, all the time. I liked people like Art Palin, Johnny Carson, anybody who was Ed Sullivan. I did a very early Ed Sullivan
is that right?
As an 8-year-old. Right here on our stage, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Topo Gigio. And this sort of thing, and I was always very impressionable and remained impressionable to this day.
So in other words, it's always been in you.
Yes.
And it's a natural thing to you. While you were working without being on the stage as a laborer, as you said, for some odd years, were you always thinking about doing it?
Oh, yeah. And I was always clowning at work and always doing a monologue from a movie, you know, like or like Sean Connery. I'm waiting to be impressed. That's the Chicago way. Put one of yours in the hospital. You put one of his in the morgue. You know, and I was always acting, trying to act, trying to do impressions, and just like trying to emulate that which I really, really loved, and that was movie acting.
So you were watching movies and TV and learning from that more than going to school on it.
Oh, yeah.
Or doing it.
Yeah. I never went to school for it.
You've never had any training.
I've stolen acting classes.
How's that? How do you do
This
that?
is a very interesting story. A good friend of mine, Donna Perkins, who is a teacher, CCAC,
Right.
at 625 Stanwix, and this was back in the late 80s, early 90s, where a friend of mine, Ray DeCane, he was taking classes there, and he decided to just take me with him. So I'm sitting in the class, and she's, I'm sorry, who are you? I said, oh, I'm just here to listen in a like an AA meeting or something. You know?
Like an AA meeting.
And I listened to her, and she let me get up and try some stuff. And I also just gave her monologues, you know, from different movies.
She let you perform.
Yeah, right there in the class.
How about that?
And she let me come back. And it was amazing. We're still friends to this day.
Well, that's really cool.
Yeah, and she's so proud of me.
That doesn't happen every day that a teacher will let you stick around for free.
She was the closest thing to an acting teacher I've ever had.
Mm-hmm. And so how have you studied to be an actor, or do you not study? Do you just do it?
Oh, now, I have my own little process where...
this is what interests me the most.
Well, yeah, I'm very good, and people who work with me in plays know that I'm usually the first person off book, and no matter how much dialogue I have, I'm usually the first one, and it's not a competition. It's just from the Catholic schools. There was this program that they put me and a couple of other students into, and we thought it was speed reading, where they would have us in this room, they'd have the overhead projector, and they would flash a word on the screen, and we'd have to really pay attention and write down that word. And after a while, they would flash a sentence, and we'd have to mentally take a picture of it.
Right.
Because we involuntarily take pictures of what we see.
That's interesting.
But when you can condition your mind to voluntarily take a picture of something, that's when you can really retain it.
That's you actively making a choice to retain something versus it just sticking.
Yes. Whereas while I'm on stage, I'm looking at you, but I'm actually seeing my script in my head.
Really?
I know what part of the page it's on, what page it's on. I know your dialogue, because my mind has voluntarily taken a picture of it.
Do you have a photographic memory?
I do now.
You do. So do you remember most everything that happens all day long?
Yeah, it's crazy. And a
Wow.
phonographic memory as well. That's part of what helps me to be an impressionist. Because I could do Bill Cosby is inapropos as it is now, and which is terrible.
Yes.
It's one of my best impressions, and now I can't do it anymore. But unless I'm, bashing him. But yeah, I listen and I see and I lock it in.
Is it the same with music? You hear a piece of music and it's instantly there?
Never had a single lesson of music, but I play keyboards.
Seriously?
Play keyboards, yeah, drums.
At what age did you start playing instruments?
26.
So you didn't even start as a kid?
Yeah. No aptitude.
That is...
Now I play harmonica, I play
Wow.
keyboards, I play an upright bass, and I'm a drummer.
Are you good enough to perform it?
I had my own band before I got into theater.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Because most people, they have to start as a young kid to get any kind of good at all.
Right. And yeah, I just always liked it. I always wanted to do it, to be it. I'd listen to, when I was a kid, when DVE, WDVE first came on the airwaves, I had a brother who's, I still do, and he's 8 years older than me, and he would keep his radio on. I mean, he had one of the first FM radios, and he would keep it on WDVE, and I'm listening to Hendrix and Robin Trower and, Procol Harum, yeah, that's when DVE, they played the real...
Whiter Shade of Pale.
Yeah,
That doesn't get, to me, it doesn't get better than that song right there.
Right. Procol Harum, Conquistador, stuff like that. Jefferson Airplane, and I would listen, and I would do impressions of them, and every now and then they would do Cheech and Chong segments, and then I became a kid doing Cheech and Chong.
Was that more interesting to you than the music? The verbal stuff?
Well, yeah, it was. It really was, because from that I got to, we always listened to Bill Cosby's records,
sure,
Flip Wilson, and then going into puberty and whatnot, getting introduced to Richard Pryor.
Red Fox?
Yeah, Red Fox, sure. Rudy Ray Moore, and the real dirty blue stuff, Mm-hmm. And but Cheech and Chong really stuck in my head because they loved music too, and they would come up with their own little silly songs.
Sure.
Earache My Eye, or Santa Claus, see that Santa Claus, the guy with the hair on his jaws. Hey, man, what are you doing, man? I'm trying to write a song about Santa Claus. About who, man? About Santa Claus, man. Santa Claus. Ah, yeah, I played with those cats, man. And I was this kid who was just always doing this stuff, but I didn't have a venue, didn't have
an outlet for it.
Yeah.
But you were doing it anyway.
Yeah.
You were doing, by the way, what most artists will say, which is, don't tell them I'll do this for free. If they're paying me, don't tell them I'll do this for free. You would do it for free.
Yeah. I've done it.
Well, no question. So have I. I think anybody that's ever been in a theater for any length of time has done a lot of stuff for free.
I've told people, I'll pay you to let me in the show.
Are there shows like that you focus on where they're coming about and you're determined to be in them somehow?
No.
So you don't go out and politic your way into a show?
Well, no, I don't. Mainly because... and this is no boast that it's just that people...
They're coming to you.
Yeah, they'll come to me, and they'll come to me long in advance.
Sure. Well, they want to book your time. Right,
and because, they never know where I'm going to be, and so they'll get me, like, long in advance, even if they want me to audition, if they don't just, they just want me to read for the part, they'll give it to me, like, well in advance, and I really love when they cast me, and we got, like, 8 months before... before rehearsal starts. I'm coming in off book.
You're sure. Well, if you can memorize it by looking at it, and studying it that way, of course you're going to be off book. That is such a huge advantage.
Yeah, I don't want the director. I want to be one less of a problem to a director. If you're struggling for your lines, it's just such an irritant for a director. They can't direct you if you got that script in your face.
Once you're either in rehearsal or in performance, do you ever go up? You ever forget?
Oh, heck yeah.
You do?
Oh, my goodness.
So then what do you do? How do you get it back?
Well, one thing I don't do is I don't stop talking. That's what you don't do, because when they get that pregnant pause and then they see that look like the 2-year-old who just loaded his diaper, because that's how you look. It's how we all look when we go. We know that look.
It's what I call Scooby-Doo.
Yes. That's all I got. Yeah. And it happens. It happens to the best of us. That's why you never stop working. You never stop working on your script. And so many times, so many shows, we'll get to like our last show, and I'm like, wow, here we are at our last show. We're just about ready to open.
Because you finally started to figure out the character.
Yeah, you get stuff.
Because locally, there are not a lot of shows that run for any real lengths of time.
No.
And they're all 2-3 weeks.
And that's another thing that I've often pondered, like with the turnover of shows that I do. How would I be able to deal with like being in a show that lasts 3 years on Broadway?
Sure.
You know,
Sure.
it's like Groundhog Day. I imagine, but that money, that make it all.
I think you would. First of all, I think you do very well.
Yeah, another day at the office.
It would be a totally different thing because here it's what's next, right? You're in it and you're already thinking what's next.
Yeah. I already have another script in my hand by the time I close the show. We just closed Savior Samuel. I'm already booked.
Savior Samuel was fantastic.
Thank you. But I'm already booked to do the show on 420 this month. And
How I Learned What I Learned.
Yep, How I Learned What I Learned. And then I'll be doing Exonerated with my dear friend Cotter Smith from Mindhunter.
Right.
They're doing a reading of Exonerated May 17th and 18th.
Where's that going to be?
I don't know yet. I'm not sure, but I'll definitely let you know.
I think he's teaching here at Point Park right now.
Yeah. He's so awesome. I did a play called Rules of Seconds with him last year.
Where was that?
It was at Barebones production.
Got it.
And it was about dueling in the 1850s, and
Wow.
it was just so fantastic.
Did you have to fence?
No.
Oh, dueling with pistols.
Well, that was the thing.
Pistols.
You learned. The show was like a tutorial of dueling. Different rules were explained to the audience, and thank goodness I was the character who got to explain it, because you can choose whatever weapon. And in this show, this one guy, he decided to choose a pistol. The other guy, who is played by Patrick Jordan, was like an experienced duelist against this Chinese immigrant who didn't know anything about it. So while the Chinese immigrant chose a pistol, Patrick's character chose a mug of beer. And when we did the count...
How does that work?
When we did the count, Patrick just poured his beer on the flint of the pistol and done.
Oh.
Honor is achieved.
Clever.
And without any bloodshed. So there's all kind of things that you learned in that show. It's just so amazing. Carter played the duelist, the master duelist. And it was special effects by Steve Tolan.
Steve Tolan.
Yeah, lots of blood.
Steve Tolan, who, by the way, has been on StoryBeat.
Awesome. Yeah, he is the FX man. And so much blood. So much blood in that show.
Oh, really?
Fantastic.
How'd they clean it up?
Well, very carefully.
After every performance, somebody had to go around and clean all that blood up.
Somebody had to clean it up. And, it was stuff that would ease through the boards on and it was something. It was something to clean up.
So let me ask you, do you think of, as many people do, that acting for you is a calling? It's something you were called to do in life.
Oh, definitely. Most definitely.
You were born to do this.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
I think that's I find that to be a regular thing for artists, that they were born to do what they're doing. And they've known it like you did since you were a small child.
Sure.
Who were your earliest inspirations and influences? Who did you admire? We've already talked about people like Johnny Carson and so on, but who in the acting profession did you really look up to as a kid?
I tell you what, Burt Reynolds.
Reynolds.
First and foremost.
That's the first time
Reynolds.
I've ever heard anybody say that. That's cool.
Burt Reynolds. I was even told that I looked like Burt Reynolds. I can't see how. But I don't know. Maybe it was just my attitude, the way I carried myself. But and we were both called Gator. Me, Wali Gator, him Gator, because he's a tough,
so
moon
people
runner.
do call you Gator. I wasn't even going to bring it up, but you did.
Yeah.
So people call you Gator, and it comes from what? Being Wally Gator?
Wali Gator, the cartoon, the Hanna-Barbera cartoon.
Was that a favorite of yours as a kid?
No. No, it was not. He talked like Ed Wynn, and he was like this alligator who would just escape from the zoo and go hanging out on the town.
Yes.
And he'd go walking around talking like this all the time. I better get back to the zoo. So,
But somehow as a kid that got stuck to you?
Oh, yeah, Wali Gator. And then, having the name Wali Jamal Abdullah, and I didn't change my name to that. It was my father's name, and his father's name is Mubarak Farouk Abdullah. Wow. I was fourth generation Abdullah. My great-grandfather had converted to Islam back in the 20s.
Wow.
From what I've been told. And, everybody in my family that I know of my immediate father's side family is like Rashida, Halima, Ali, Austin, all these names, and going to regular public school with a name like that, you got messed with. Okay, because this is
I would think so.
This is pre Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. It's pre Muhammad Ali.
Sure.
He was still Cassius Clay. But then once they
Luau Sindor.
Right. But once they, and so I got messed with. But then when I went to Catholic schools, I'm going to school with kids with names like Gisparik, Turkovich, Kistowski.
Well, you're in Pittsburgh, man.
Right, and like you guys' names aren't any less funny than mine, so we were cool, and they just called me Ab, and because we all addressed each other by our last names like the nuns did.
So at what point did you become Gator? When did that happen?
Oh, that was preschool.
Preschool?
Yeah, because the cartoon.
Sure, okay.
Wally Gator. Oh, my God, I heard that.
Do you mind being called that?
I don't know. But when that cartoon, it wasn't complimentary, because half the people that call me that, they just think of an alligator. They don't think of Wali Gator.
Well, when I first heard Wali Gator Jamal, I immediately thought Wali Gator because I've spent 25 years in the animation business.
Oh.
So I know all about Wali Gator.
Okay. Do you know the Scheimers?
I've met Lou Scheimer.
Yeah,
I don't know him well. Well, he's gone now, obviously.
Right. His nephews, I believe, run Doraemon Appliances.
Is that right?
I used to work for them.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and they told me, because they said, when I was interviewing for them, he said, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" I said, "Doing cartoon voices on Cartoon Network." They were like, "Really? Oh, well, our uncle is this guy."
Lou
like,
Scheimer.
Really? Next thing you know, got hired. You never know. You got the gift of gab, and like you never know what you might have in common with someone.
So I'm going to jump to a conclusion. You correct me if I'm wrong. That one of your artistic heroes has to be August Wilson.
Oh, definitely.
But he didn't come along on the face of the known world till well into your life. It wasn't like he was around when you were a kid or when I was a kid.
No. I'll tell you what, because I was just thinking about this earlier. When I was in high school, I was a troubled kid. I got into trouble a lot. I was too smart for my own good. That's what I was always told. And I believe it. And I wound up in this alternative high school in Oakland, the McKee Play School, and I turned stuff around. I became editor of school newspaper, class president. People had high aspirations for me. And these teachers would talk to you. There were like smaller classes so they could be one-on-one with you. And I was introduced by my teacher, Harold Rosenberg. He was one of my favorite people in the whole world. He introduced me to the 16 edition collection of Donald Goines. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
I have heard of Donald Goines.
Yeah, Donald Goines was one of the most fantastic writers that people hardly know anything about. Two of his books became movies. Never Die Alone, that was with David Arquette.
Okay.
And DMX.
DMX.
Imagine the two of them.
That's a stretch.
Well, yeah, David Arquette was this nerd, and he ran across this gangster, DMX, who got shot, and DMX made him take a blood oath before he died to take care of this, and that. He gave him a Stutz Bearcat, all this money, and David Arquette slowly but surely became this gangster. Went from nerd to gangster. Donald Goines wrote that. He was fantastic. And so once I started reading, hearing about August Wilson's work, it gave me that same ring. It had that same ring to it, and that ring was familiarity.
So what? This is something that I find fascinating. There are certain artists in generations that move the needle. Lots of artists are good and are entertaining, and people want to deal with them, but they don't move the needle. Mm-hmm. August Wilson moved the needle.
Yeah.
What is it about August Wilson's work for you that did that? What is it that he has that just takes it to a different level? Because I can tell you what I think, but I want to hear yours.
Well, first and foremost, the characters. The characters are my family members. Like Solly Two Kings, he's my Uncle Lee. boy Willie, he's my cousin Rabbit, who's deceased, and they just speak to me. They're real, and they're not in the least bit made up. These characters are real. Like Citizen is very fallible. People wind up leaving out of the audience loving Citizen, but he's the most flawed character in Gem of the Ocean. He steals a bucket of nails. Somebody else gets blamed for it. The guy goes to his death, a watery grave, drowning, and he's standing there watching him, and all he could say is, he could have come out the water. And later on, he's faced with that in the City of Bones, as opposed to, a jail sentence. Right. Like he should have got. But August makes you forget about that and look at the humanity of this guy.
What do you think that he does that causes that to happen? I mean, even though these are very realistic characters, clearly, he still had to create that world. The world came from something he understood and knew, and these characters, I'm sure, came from his own life too.
Yeah.
But how did he do that? Because I'm a writer, and I'm not sure I've ever come close to achieving that. So how did he do? What is it about his work?
Well, there are a few patterns in his plays that I've noticed that, and they're all hinged on specific themes, and these specific themes are present in all of his plays. And first and foremost, family. Each of his plays deals with some deep, obsessive family, real family, like the jealousy, the pride, the desperation, the avarice. It's all there, and
always somehow deeply rooted love, isn't it?
Yes, you got and death,
and
it's just like Holloway says in Two Trains Running. See, you got love and you got death. See, and death will find you. It's up to you to find love.
Well, that's and that's so common in the world, love and death. There have been so many subjects on love and death, but love and death are two of the most common things for human beings
that we're preoccupied with.
Almost everybody, I would think, with rare exception, has experienced love in their life of some kind, and everybody's going to experience death.
Oh yeah, it's common.
I don't know anybody that's ever escaped it. Do you?
Nope.
Okay, so
Harry Houdini a few times.
Yeah,
but ultimately, no.
But ultimately, he did not escape it. Is correct. No. I think that he has a way with dialogue that nobody else has.
Yes.
He is the American Shakespeare.
There's a rhythm. There's a clear and distinctive rhythm to his dialogue.
There is.
And I feel it, and that's another thing that assists me in remembering my lines. The more dialogue makes sense to me, the easier it is to lock in.
Well, that makes sense. Because if it really, really makes sense to you, then it's just natural.
Right. And it's making sense in a way that someone like me would make sense of it. He writes for African Americans, for the people that he writes about, for the women to express the general feeling of hurt when or disappointment or abject torture from wanting something. And that is the real action of a play, which defines each character. He clearly defines what each of those characters want. In most cases, they come right out and tell you
and say it
exactly what they want. In Joe Turner's Come and Gone, Maddie Campbell, I remember everybody's lines. This girl, Maddie Campbell, this is a scene I wasn't even in, but she was so adamant about this guy, Jack Carper, coming back to her. And that's what she wanted. She wanted that man to come back to her, but it was up to Bynum to show her, you find somebody else. You don't have to be all that pressed about that one guy. It wasn't for you. And I can't bind what don't cling. I can only bind what cling. If it don't cling, you can't bind what don't cling. And as little sense as that seems to make, it made sense to her. And she wound up clinging to somebody else. By the end of the play.
Well, every great, this is part of what we teach, because I teach screenwriting, so a part of what we teach is conflict in every moment of the show. And he's also, August Wilson is also extraordinary at nonstop conflict, even when it's internal conflict, external conflict. It doesn't have to be battles, though he's really good at people battling each other, especially with words. He's just really good at that tension, keeping the tension there.
Yeah.
When you're playing scenes like that, do you feel that tension? Are you feeling it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's
you invest in it, don't you?
I do. I'm fully invested. And another thing that he does as such a clever writer is he'll set an audience up. See, every writer, when he's writing a dialogue, he's laying a trail of breadcrumbs.
Definitely.
He's laying that trail.
The smart ones do.
Right. And he'll lead you to the funniest joke you ever heard. And while you're in the middle of laughing, he'll hit you with the most violent, tragic moment that just makes you like, what the, and shut up. I mean, and you're like, what just happened? How did it just change like that? Because life does that.
He's doing exactly what life does, which is to tear you apart sometimes from the inside out.
Make you feel good, so good for a moment, and then, pow, sucker punch you, a gut punch. Oh, my God.
I don't know how your life is, although I can imagine parts of it, but not all of it, obviously. But life for me has always been a roller coaster.
Oh, sure.
You've got your ups and your downs and your ups and downs. Sometimes the ups are really up and sometimes the downs are really down. Mm-hmm. And you have to figure out how to keep trying to come back to that middle ground all the time.
Yeah, you do. You really do. And as a person who had fiddled with suicide.
Really?
It was before I got involved in theater, because that was another thing. I wasn't on earth doing what I felt like I should be doing.
So you felt purposeless.
I did. I felt rudderless, directionless. My mom died, and that's when it really descended. I really descended, into a really, really deep depression. I just wandered around. I quit a really good job, and I was just wandering around for like the next 5 years. And I just felt I just wasn't part of anything. And so I ultimately stood on the Roberto Clemente Bridge about this time of year, back in 1998. Yeah, 98. The year before, and no, it was 97. And I was really contemplating. It was sheets of ice on the river, Allegheny River. It was so cold. And I was just standing there, tears streaming down my face, and I wanted to do it. But I stopped and I said, call your sister. Just call your sister. My sister's name's Walita. Wally and Walita, right? And she just had a birthday recently, and I called her, and she came, grabbed me up, helped me to think of a reason,
stick around.
Yeah. I mean, other than the fact that I would hurt so many people, by doing that. And I've been able to talk to other people, who are at that point and feel that, because you can really feel like there's, you're at that edge and there's a bulldozer at your back.
There's nothing stopping it.
Yeah. And it's a terrible place to be.
And theater has saved your life, hasn't
yes, it has. It literally has, because I wound up staying with my sister, and I just played by the rules, and I just constantly tried to think of positive things to involve myself in. And while I was there, it was crazy. I met this man when I was in St. Francis on the suicide floor.
Okay.
With the other suicide attempters. There was this older white guy who just didn't talk to anybody, just sat in the room smoking this and that. And even though I'm feeling like, because St. Francis, the suicide floor, the windows overlooked Allegheny Cemetery. Real cathartic,
Well,
right?
that's cathartic.
Right. And so this guy wouldn't talk to anybody. So I sat next to him and I told him a joke. It was a dirty joke, so I'm not going to say it. But unless I could.
I've got a adult rating. If you want to tell us a dirty joke, you can.
I sat next to him and I said, "You want to know what the definition of a tiger is?" And he just, I saw him looking at me out the corner of his eye, trying to ignore me. I said, "It's 455 pounds of pussy. Only it eats you, buddy."
Oh.
Next thing you know, his shoulders started shaking, and I told him another one. And we became really good friends, and he wound up investing in me. I told him what I was about, what I did. I told him I was a drummer, and this and that. He bought me a set of drums. Next thing you know, I had a band.
So he had some money, obviously.
Yeah, he had a few bucks. And he said, "I want to see you do what you say you do." So next thing you know, I'm like, because I, got all kind of friends who are musicians. I'm like, "Hey, man, I want to put this little thing together." I called my friend Haywood Vincent, who just recently passed away. He was an incredible piano player, keyboard, synthesizers, all that. And he taught me the standards.
Haywood Vincent did.
Yes, he taught me the standards. Songs like "Song from My Father," "Mercy, Mercy, Mercy."
Yeah.
Standards like that, Killer Joe. And he said, "If you remember these songs, you could go into any jazz nightclub in the world and sit in."
That's true.
And I was like, wow. So later on that year, things were really picking up, for me, and like going positively. So I auditioned for Nancy Mosser to be in the Temptations movie.
Mm-hmm.
And as a drummer.
For the listeners who don't live in Pittsburgh, Nancy Mosser is a casting director here in Pittsburgh. And
I was shocked. She said, "Bring some sticks." So I brought some sticks, and she had me audition on an office chair, like I'm, pretending to play drums. I'm like, wow.
Sure.
And I did that, and I got hired. So I'm meeting, because I was in the local 6471 musicians union.
Okay.
And on that shoot was just the most amazing event. I met Al Dow,
okay,
Robbie Klein,
yeah,
all these, the late great, oh my God, Chuck Austin,
mm-hmm.
Doug Green, all these Pittsburgh jazz professionals who had been playing and all over the world, and we're sitting there. And they're moving the lights around. So the director, he comes up, he says, "Look, fellas, everybody's all dressed up because we're in the scene. It's like the Copa, 67 Copa.
Right.
Their first time playing the Copa, the Temptations."
What was the name of this movie again?
The Temptations.
Oh, the Temptations.
Yeah, and it was the first time the Temptations played the Copa. And so they were going to switch around some lights. So they said, "Fellas, everybody's all dressed up. You're here. It's going to take us about an hour to switch this stuff around. Could you guys play something?" And every last one of those musicians turned around and looked way up there where they had the drummer, because it's the 60s. You remember the 60s?
Right.
The drummer was always up there.
Up there, sure.
Why? So they had me way up there, and they all looked up at me. And Haywood Vincent's voice said in my head very softly, "Mercy, mercy, mercy." And I said that, and they said, yeah, that's a good one. That's good. I'm like, okay, I'm driving, So I was just calling out all these standards that Haywood that had taught me. And you got to learn from whoever is in front of you, because there's nobody in this world that can't teach you something.
So music and theater essentially saved your life.
Yeah.
And you saved this gentleman's life, and he then helped to invest in you.
Yep.
And the next thing you know, you're down a different path.
Yeah.
You're down a path that actually makes you want to live.
Yeah.
So,
oh my goodness, yes. It's so amazing. From reaching out, it kind of felt like Count of Monte Cristo,
You escaped.
Yeah, from that dungeon I was in, with the help of this old guy,
found freedom.
this sage old man, who and now I've realized that the talent that I always thought I had is here, and I'm glad that things are happening for me at this age as opposed to when I was younger, because I might be dead. I don't know if I would have been mature enough.
So I'm a late bloomer. Everything I've ever done in my
Yeah, me
life has
too.
come late. So you're a late bloomer.
Yeah,
That's what
yes,
I
I am.
recognize. It didn't
Yeah.
happen for you early. It's happening for you in later years, and you have more appreciation as an older person.
Right.
You've been through life. You know what things are. As a young person, sometimes there's no level of appreciation for it.
Yeah.
There's nothing to compare it to.
Exactly, because it seems given.
Right. It seems like this is what this is who you are and what you are as a young person, and there's no sense of maybe there are other things that I struggled with. There's no struggle. I think that's really important. The struggle, I think for a lot of artists, the struggle is super important.
Right. And that there's just so many lessons that August Wilson's plays will teach you. Like in Two Trains Running, there's this young guy. I love that's another thing, a recurring thing in August Wilson's plays. There's always an older black man mentoring a younger black man.
Right.
In some kind of way, counsel him in some kind of way. And in Two Trains Running, this one young buck, he's sitting there amongst these old heads, and he's talking about the Cadillacs he's going to have, this and that. And one old guy says, you always talking about you going to have this, you going to have that. But what you don't know is them that want one got one. And the first time I heard that, I was like, man, I wish somebody would have said that simple thing to me when I was 16.
There you go.
Another one in that same scene. He's talking about he's gonna marry Rissa, the girl, the waitress, works at the diner, and that's when West, the funeral director, he steps in. He says, "Yeah, I remember I was telling my father, I was like, Daddy, I'm gonna get me a woman, and I'm gonna have me a ranch, raise cattle, be my own boss, live a good life." And the father leaned in and said, "Get the ranch first, and the woman will come." I'm like, why didn't anybody tell me that? So I wanted to put together a compilation of those sort of scenes in August Wilson's plays and put it in one consolidated show. And I found out through the estate that they didn't like you segmenting, the stuff. You're going to do it in its entirety.
That had to have been his wish.
Right. And that's why I asked, because I don't want to violate.
Well, Edward Albee's fussy like that too, even in his estate. There are a number of famous playwrights who won't let people do things to their work.
Right. And they said, you want to do a one-man show? Do How I Learned. I'm like, duh.
How many times have you performed How I Learned?
4.
And as each, would you have to relearn it every time, or do you have it?
Oh, yeah. Got to revisit that script, and live in it. You really have to live it.
How long did it take you to learn it the first time?
About 6 weeks.
Okay, you've just taken my breath away. I thought you were going to tell me 8 months, and you're saying 6 weeks.
It was
fast.
about 6 weeks from when I had gotten the script.
And it's what, 90, 100 minutes, something like that?
It's 90 minutes, 63 pages of just you.
No net.
Right. And while doing it, because I originally wanted my buddy Mark Southers to, direct it. But then
Mark, who's also been on StoryBeat.
Yes. And unfortunately, he with his condition after the accident, he couldn't do it. He had to get treated and all that sort of thing. So I was pretty much on my own. And then as I was doing it and coming up with these ways to perform these stories, because that's what it is. It's a compilation of stories. Well, I thought to myself, there are some people who know August too well to direct me in this. Because there are ways in which you can be so spot on a character that you might lose your audience. And by that, I mean this. If it's just you and you expect to hold an audience attention for 90 minutes, you got to go back. The storytelling 101.
And that means?
The three bears.
The three bears.
When you're telling that kid that story, the three bears, and you're not baby bear, you're not mama bear, you're not papa bear, and you're not Goldilocks, that kid is going to correct you. Mommy, that doesn't sound like the baby bear. You know, and you got to be them in order to keep that kid's attention. And it's the same with adult audiences. You're quoting wherever there is dialogue where he is quoting someone, where August is quoting someone,
right.
I become that person.
So you play lots of parts.
Like with Charlie Williams. He said, August, when you go to jail, call Al Lichtenstein. He's the best lawyer in Pittsburgh. I become the character. He talks about Cy Morocco. He's like, oh, August, man, oh, I see. I got something for you, man. I don't know Cy Morocco. Never met Cy Morocco.
But you can play Cy Morocco.
Because other people don't know.
Right, sure.
And I'm not going to let the facts get in the way of me telling a good story.
Well, if it was a famous name, then you would be a little more obliged to sound or rhythmically sound like them somehow. Yeah. But if it's an unknown person, you can just do it. How many characters do you do in the show?
I never really counted. There's a lot.
Are there dozens?
There's I'd say maybe 20.
20 characters.
Maybe 20.
Over 90 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, some of the characters are recurring. Some are women. Some one is a 7th grade girl.
7th grade girl.
Yeah.
This I look forward to seeing.
Oh, you're gonna love it. You're gonna love it. I channel, and I purposely channel these people. I let go of me real quick. I drop me like a hot potato and pick up that character.
Do you? Okay, so you've been telling such marvelous stories, and I've let you go at it because we're off a process a little bit. That's fine. I'm just curious, when you say that, when you channel these characters and when you drop into them, do you lose sight of who you are entirely?
Yes.
You literally live in their skin?
Mm-hmm.
You become those characters.
Yeah.
And is it something that you work to achieve, or does it just happen?
It is work. And
so
excuse me, it requires work. It requires
tell
the
us,
opposite of introspection.
Extrospection. I guess that's a word I just made up. Tell us do you have a method or a technique that you use? Do you have some sort of thing that you do?
Well, one thing that I do, like I was saying, like with the one character is my Uncle Lee.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I associate these characters as closely as possible with someone I know. Like
so then you're doing almost an impersonation of that person.
Right. But with
a person that no one would know except your family.
Right. So I'm creating this character from the clay that is this person that I know or know of. You know, like when I played Headley in 7 Guitars.
Yeah.
I figured out for myself, because August doesn't spell everything out for you. He doesn't specifically say this guy's from the islands.
Nor does Shakespeare.
Right. You got to figure that out.
Yes.
From the dialogue. And playing Headley, I'm looking at the dialogue saying, my father, he kicked me with him boot in my mouth. With him boot in my mouth. Now, he's got to be from somewhere else.
He's got to be from somewhere else.
So I just said, wait a minute. He kicked me with him boot in my mouth. I shut up that day, you know. You know, and like just heard him like this, just listen, like, and he talks about he used to make the run. His father used to make the run from the islands to New Orleans to see Buddy Bolden. You know, he talks about when he was in school, when he was a little boy, this teacher was teaching him about Toussaint Louverture.
Okay.
Now, this is 1948. Headley is 59 years old. Do the math. 1900, he was 11 years old, probably around the time when he was going to school and learning about Toussaint Louverture.
Right.
What school in America was he learning about Toussaint Louverture? None.
Yeah, none. And maybe
New Orleans. Yeah.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Maybe. But he in Pittsburgh.
Right.
So, I believe that he took the Marcus Garvey route. From Jamaica to New York to Pittsburgh,
Mm-hmm.
So, and I do all that in my head while I'm formulating who this guy is. And it just rolls out once it becomes more and more solidified.
How long does it take you to as you're, so obviously I want to go back and do a little technique here.
Sure.
So you have a play, you've never read it before, you've heard about it, but you've never read it before, and now you read it for the first time. Are you instantly starting to have this stuff form for you, or does it take you a while? Do you have to read it many times to get there? How does it work for you?
Well, I do have to read it a few times, because each time I read it, I see something that I missed when I was going through it, especially.
Well, 63 pages of monologue, I would expect.
Well, that's the thing. I know who I'm playing, but when you're in a play, and like this lady sent me a script, and she said, "You pick the character. I see you playing any of these characters," and it's all guys, and I'm like, wow, this guy's different, and this guy's like this, and this guy's like that. Which one of these guys would I want to play? And being an older cat, I'm not picking the one with the most dialogue. See, that's what a younger actor would do. We seem to assess the value of our role with the amount of dialogue we have.
I'm guessing the inner need to be in the total spotlight all the time isn't as great as it once was.
No,
it isn't for me either. You don't need it. You've gotten the applause, you've gotten the credits, people have complimented you, and over time what you want is excellence and not necessarily lots.
Exactly. And not to mention, I mean, every time I think about this, I think about the movie Shane,
okay.
Jack Palance.
Yes.
He played Wilson.
Right.
He had 12 lines. 12 lines in that whole movie, won Best Supporting Actor. So it's not about what you got. There's no small roles, as they say.
Yeah, there's no small parts. There's only small actors.
Yeah,
that's the old cliche.
Because it's what you do with it. And like with case in point, Seven Guitars, which is my favorite August Wilson play, and this is why. Playing Headley. Headley's the oldest character in the play. Out of the guys, he's the only one who's always got money.
Okay.
He's never back and forth to the pawn shop like the rest of the guys.
Right.
He hooks up with the young hottie who saunters in at the end of the first act, and nobody sees that coming. It's that writer that August is. It's a punch in the stomach. You think Floyd's going to cheat on his girlfriend with her or something like that. But boom, she winds up with Headley. And another thing, he kills the lead character. Kills him. And takes all his money. And gets away with it. He's making it rain at the end of the play. The bad guy wins sometimes. But you didn't even know he was the bad guy. He wasn't the bad guy until the end.
Well, that's the twist.
Yeah, that's that punch in the stomach, man. You walk out like, wow, no. But here's a funny thing, though. Playing that character, using my best West Indies accent, don't you know? I'm doing the thing. And we get off, the play's over, and we're shaking people's hands, this and that. I'm like, thank you for coming. And this lady was like, whoa. I was not ready for that. You're not from the islands? I was like, I was born in Homestead. I grew up on the south side.
That's the greatest compliment you could ever get.
Yeah. Well, that and the character Caesar in Gem of the Ocean every night, because he's a bad guy. Every night. Curtain call. I got booed, raising the roof.
That's a compliment too.
Oh my God, yeah.
I thought, in Savior Samuel, it's, you didn't play the nicest guy ever. And then meeting you afterwards for the first time, I thought, oh, wow. That was so impressive.
This guy's a teddy bear.
He's just a nice guy. That's always impressive.
It's the eyebrows. It's the
eyebrows.
Yeah.
No, I would say it's more than that, Wally. It's the you know how to chew a part up and spit it out with just gusto.
It's fun. It's fun and it's work. And they say if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life.
Okay, so that is true. That is true. Okay, so can you think of what the single most challenging stage experience you've ever had? And how did you solve it?
Boy Willie. Piano lesson. And I solved it by doing it. And I say difficult because it was the most physically demanding role I ever had. Boy Willie, not to mention this was in 2015 or 14, which meant I was 52.
Okay.
Playing this guy who's like more likely in his 30s. So I'm doing stuff like, coming in and, vaulting over the couch and landing like the Duke's Hazzard and whatnot. Like, yeah, he's country boy from Mississippi, and I have to fight with this ghost, and first the ghost throws me down the stairs, and Steve Tolan, once again, brings in these holograms of this ghost.
Okay.
And they pop in and pop out. And I have to be at a certain point on the stage. Like the first I'm on the steps and it's like he kicks me down the steps. That's what the hologram does. So I have to be right there and receive this imaginary kick and fall down the steps. And I was going down the steps this one time. There was a nail sticking out of the railing. And it ripped my hand open, and I hit the window, and I go back, but I'm still gone. And Randy Kovitz, he choreographed this imaginary fight that I'm having
Randy,
with this ghost.
who's not only a good actor himself, but also an excellent stage fight choreographer.
Fantastic, yeah. And so I get my head slammed off of the piano. And then
on purpose or by accident?
Right. No.
On purpose.
Yeah. But by the ghost.
Okay.
And so I stagger over, and the ghost appears over here, and he punches me, and I stumble, and I flip over the couch, and then I stand up, and this one night, after I flip over the couch, I'm supposed to pick up this little coffee table and swing it around. I break this coffee table every night. I slung it down, and then I take this punch that nobody gives me. I'm standing in the middle of the stage and I'm saying, "Come on, Sutter," and I get hit and I go back and I hit the couch and the couch goes back.
Oh.
And it goes so far back. You see my feet sticking up in the air, and miraculously it came back down. And so I followed through. I got up off of the couch. I run toward the center and take an imaginary punch, and it was just. So
this was physically demanding.
Yeah, it beat me up.
Every performance.
Yeah.
Were you all black and blue after the end of it?
Yeah.
Okay, and so did you resolve? I guess that's not a good question. Did you
survived it? I survived
clearly you survived it. Did you over time find a way for it to be less painful?
No.
It always was painful.
Yeah. And I always said, I'm glad I was able to get that role in, because I'll never try to do it again. No.
And it had to be convincing at the same time.
Right. And very compelling. It's a ghost, and then it crescendos with the woman playing my sister banging on the piano keys, and Mark is just such a genius. When that's happening, the ghost of the yellow dog, this light comes. It's supposed to be this train. And when that's happening, you're hearing the train whistle, and the lights got real big, and Mark had sheets of music, pages of sheet music descending from the catwalk.
Really?
Down on the audience. It was fantastic. It was at Douglas Wilson Center. It was fantastic.
In the main room?
Yeah.
In the big theater?
Yeah.
That's such a great theater.
Yeah.
Is that where you're going to do your show?
Yeah.
In the big theater?
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
Oh yeah, it's going to be fantastic.
I
I did
no
it there
doubt.
first, and it's grown so much. The show has grown so much since the first time I did it, and I have to send a special shout out to Janice Burley Wilson, who believed in, having me come and do it. And I'm hoping that if we get such a great turnout, that maybe we could make it like The Chief.
Well,
and do it every year.
I don't see why not if you can build your audience. That's for sure.
And why not have the guy who's done all of August plays,
right.
who's from Pittsburgh,
that's exactly right,
who met August,
and you're probably always going to want to do it for a brief period of time to drive traffic in,
right?
Because you're going to want to always drive traffic in.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see any reason. Has anybody ever done it on Broadway?
Yeah. Ruben Santiago Hudson.
He did it on Broadway.
Yeah, he did it on Broadway. He's coming. He's coming here
coming
for
to see
the
it?
gala. Well, he's not coming to see it. He'll be here the following weekend for the gala.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to ask this odd question. What do you think makes a good story good? I ask this question of a lot of guests, and I get very interesting answers. What, for you, makes a good story good?
Conflict.
I think that's the clear answer.
Conflict. What is stopping this protagonist from achieving or acquiring what he clearly states he wants? What's standing in the way?
So what we teach is that the protagonist and other characters, but the protagonist for sure, needs to have a clear want.
Yes.
At the beginning of the story. And that's usually set at what we call the inciting incident. And then that character goes off attempting to get that want, and sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. And it's not required that you do one or the other. It's just as that it gets to a resolution of that want, which should then result in a need. So a character should go from a want to a need. So a bank
raising the stakes.
That's correct. And that need and that resolution, that from the want to the need, is what we call a character arc academically. That is a character arc, so that the character goes from here to there and the audience feels it. And that's that word feel is important. What you've been talking about all along is that characters feel things so that the audience then feels things. It's all about emotion.
Right. If the actor delivers that feeling.
Absolutely.
He's still, it's just like when you hear something in one ear and you got to tell the person next to you the same thing, and you know how that circle, by the time it gets around, it's a totally different thing. Well, the actor has to take what's there and give it to them the way it is on the paper.
Do you feel wrung out at the end of most performances?
Yeah.
You feel all in?
Well, it depends. It really depends on the role.
I would think most of the August Wilson shows you've done, you were wrung out at the end of the show.
Well, there are some characters that I don't like to play, but you'll never know that.
Is that because they're too tough on you emotionally?
No, I don't like them. The character, like in King Hedley II, I had to play Elmore. Elmore is he's this slickster, and he's a hustler. And from back in the day, and he haunts this woman, and he killed this man who she loved, and he didn't, because she didn't love him the way she loved the other guy. So he, jealous rage, killed him, and he still carried the lie as to why he killed him. All those years. And I'm like, this guy is he's such a slime ball. But that helps me to portray him.
But because
I understand who he is.
But you, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding of most actors is they must play any character they play as if that character's correct. No matter how evil a character is. Most antagonists or bad guys in stories, villains, don't think they're bad.
Right.
They think what they're doing. They have some kind of a rationale for it.
They rationalize, and
So do you play it that way? Where
I do, but once the scene's over, I'm like, what a jerk this guy is. He's a jerk. I'm sorry, because I have to arrest Aunt Esther. I have to take this 300-year-old woman to jail. I'm ready to put handcuffs on her. He's just, I mean, like another thing is he says that he sells magic bread. And he says, that's right. You only have to eat half as much to get twice as full. See, I'm doing the people a favor, but I charge them 2.5 times for it. And I'm like, no, that ain't right. No. And the thing is that a character like Caesar is real because he might have the solution for cancer. He might have the cure for cancer, but don't nobody want it because of his caustic personality.
It's not worth it.
The stuff that comes with it. His condescending attitude towards people and just his double dealing, in business and whatnot. Just like, no, it's like you said, not worth it.
It's not worth it.
Yeah.
Okay, so what have you learned? Give us a lesson that you've learned from one or more directors that you wish more directors would do.
I would say that you wish more directors would.
In other words, somebody gave you direction or did something for you, and you went, "Wow, I wish I got more of that."
Wow, that is a great question, and there's a bunch of answers, but I want to come up with the ultimate one.
You can come up with more than one if you want.
Well, to say learn your lines isn't quite enough.
Well, Spencer Tracy once famously said, all you need to know as an actor is know your lines and don't bump into the furniture. Now, I think there's a bit more to it than that, but that he once famously said that.
Yeah. I would say don't overdo it.
Don't overdo it. What do you mean by don't overdo it?
By that, I mean take what you have in the script and don't try to add to it. A lot of times an actor, like I said earlier, will base or assess the value of their role with the amount of lines that they have.
Sure.
And if they don't feel like the dialogue allows them enough creativity that they have to change something or add something, then they are not fully exploring that role.
They're not fulfilling the playwright's vision.
Exactly.
They're adding to it.
Where it's like if I am an architect and I made a drawing of the house that I want and I give it to the director, the general contractor.
Exactly.
And he has the actors, the plumber, the electrician, and all those people doing this and that. They have to follow that plan. They have to follow that schematic. That schematic is the script, Whereas right here on this part of the schematic drawing, there is there is an awning,
right?
And an actor sees that and says, I don't like that there. I think there should be a gazebo there, and like, no, you get fired. No, that gazebo goes on your your plan.
Unless, as you've already alluded to, like August Wilson, like Shakespeare, they leave it open to you to interpret.
Yes.
And then you can do what you need to do to make that come in. And that's when a director's super important because they're seeing the bigger picture that's very hard for you to see while you're in it, yes?
Right, yes, exactly. So I want you to bring something, and the director that doesn't want that that director doesn't know what they want.
How much do you believe in investing all the way in a character versus playing middle of the road?
All the way.
All the way.
Got to do it all the way.
All the time.
Yeah, no one will ever accuse Wali Jamal of phoning it in.
I think I can. I've certainly not seen all your performances, but I think I can well
and you will not know the script that I don't like any differently than the script that I love. You won't see any different.
So you've probably never heard of when I was in school 400 years ago, I was in a play called what was it called? It's called I Remember Mama. Okay, and I was directed by a very, very well-known character actor named Lonnie Chapman. Lonnie Chapman had been in part of the Actors Studio, and he was in the movie Baby Doll, and he was in The Birds for Hitchcock, and he had done a whole bunch of stuff. And Lonnie was well-known, and most of us were griping at the time about this treacly old play that had kind of musty dialogue, and it was not the most fun thing to do. And we were all of 18, 19, 20 years old. And he finally said, he stopped and he said, "Stop. You have to treat this as if you're doing Shakespeare." Which is what you're saying, essentially. It doesn't matter whether you think that this is the height of great writing or not.
Right.
You have to treat it as if it is.
It's the job.
It is the job.
That's when you have to understand that you that it's a job, that part of it is a job. You might not like the character, you might not like the play, you might not like the director or the actors that you're in it with, but there's a job you got to do, and if you treat that job with the same verve that you would with the job that you love, then you're always going to be working.
That's correct, and I think you're always going to be working. What are you looking for in the rehearsal period? What do you want during rehearsals? What are you trying to achieve aside from the obvious end result? But what are you looking for during rehearsals?
What I'm looking for during rehearsals is the blocking, to know what I'm doing physically while I'm delivering the dialogue. And that's where the director is most important. They're on the outside, they're looking in, and they'll say, "Wally, why don't you pick that thing up when you say this line and just look at it and hold it while you're saying this line? I might not know why, but I'll go ahead and I'll try it, because he's on the outside and he's looking in. I might have an idea that I think is better than his."
Have you worked with directors that you don't trust? Has that ever happened to you, where a director was giving you direction that was like, "Wait a minute, this is not right"?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not looking for you to name names, because this is not a gotcha show.
There was a show
What
I
did you
was
do?
in where I think, the director had an idea of who this character was, and I had an idea of who the character was, and I saw the character as an idiot. I saw him as a goofball, and the director took that to mean that I didn't like the role. So
that's not it.
So the director tried to cajole and convince me that the character was actually the smartest in the play, and I'm like, "No, he's not."
Well, that's diametrically opposed.
Yeah, right. And you're making me oppose the approach to this character even more. This playwright sees this character as a moron. She does. Okay. No, I better not do any dialogue. That will definitely tell the story. No, I'm going to tell it. The character was. He was a maintenance man, or a custodian, a janitor in this place, and he wanted to act important because he had a crush on his secretary. So this detective comes in. It is a murder mystery, and he comes in and he asks the lady a question. He says, "Hey, she ain't got to answer none of your questions. Who says she got to answer your questions anyway?" And he says, "And you are?" And I say, "Blankety blank blank, superintender." Now, don't get tricky. My neighbor's cousin was a lawyer once. I'm like, that's a moron. He's idiot. He's comedy relief. He's dumb. There's nothing smart about him.
But he doesn't think he's dumb.
No, of course not.
He thinks he's a genius.
Yeah.
So, you've seen Seinfeld, yes? Okay, so
Kramer.
Kramer,
Oh, yeah.
Kramer. That Michael Richardson said that he played him one step ahead of everybody, even though he was 3 steps behind.
Yeah.
I think that's a brilliant way to
brilliant
think.
approach, and that way you're never feeling uncomfortable. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Are there parts that you won't take? And I don't mean necessarily for money or something. I'm saying that, are there parts that you've been offered or wanted to do, but then for some reason you said, "No, I'm not going to do this"?
I had something of a problem contemplating playing the role of Hulk in Driving Miss Daisy.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, at the time,
Were you
I,
too
I-
young?
I wasn't. No. It just seemed a bit too demeaning. And Morgan Freeman, he played the heck out of the role.
Incredible.
And that was when I was still at a point where I would do the not like this character. You know, I could do it now
Mm-hmm.
because I'm in more of an understanding position
Sure.
of the character and the writer's intention that I didn't have when I first looked at the role. And like, if I was approached with that.
I think it needs to be demeaning in order to counter that.
Exactly, right. And, that was something I had to come to terms with. I mean, because
You were looking at it in one dimension.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And, because I played Tom Robinson in To Kill a Mockingbird
Mm-hmm.
with Prime Stage a long time ago. As a matter of fact, it was that show that made me Wali Jamal from Wali Jamal Abdullah, because I'd gotten an outstanding review in the Post-Gazette for the show, and the guy mentioned my name 3 times in this column, in this review, 3 times. And each time he spelled Abdullah wrong, but he spelled it wrong in a different way.
3 different ways.
3 different ways.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, there's something here. I'm like, why don't I just drop that and just go as Wali Jamal?
I think Wali Jamal's
It's so
it's
catchy.
lyrical and it's it's very catchy. Okay, so
And the girls call me Wali Jamali.
well, that's adorable.
Isn't that nothing says teddy bear like Wali
No,
Jamali.
Wali Jamali. Okay, so what did you think last year when they named you, the Post-Gazette named you Performer of the Year?
I was speechless. We were going to, I was with Montez Freeland,
Mm-hmm.
director of St.
Another great actor and
Right.
director here in Pittsburgh.
and the previous Performer of the Year for 2017. And we were together with Mark Southers going to the Western Pennsylvania School for the Deaf to find this
Young girl.
beautiful, young girl, to pick it off the tree.
And you did.
Yes, we did, and we couldn't have done better. We got over there, and we had to show our ID in order to get in there and whatnot, so they had to take your picture. So I'm getting my picture taken, and Mark Southers, he says, yeah, there's the Performer of the Year. I'm like, no, that's Montez over there, They knew, and I didn't, So I played it off, I wasn't thinking about it.
I'm betting Chris Rawson tipped them to it.
Well, yeah. He sent, matter of fact, he sent the article to Mark. And so we're going through there. We're sitting with Aaliyah. We're going through the script, and we're talking about stuff with her. And I'm sitting next to her, and Mark says, yeah, you're sitting next to the Performer of the Year. I was like, Montez is over there. Stop it. Would you stop it with the Performer of the Year? So we're all done in there. Business is done. We get back in the in Mark's truck, and we're gonna go get something to eat or something. And he says to Montez, he's like, should we let him off the hook? I'm like, man, what are y'all talking about, man? He's like, here, look. And he showed me his phone. I was like, no, for real. I mean, and I didn't think that it would happen at all, particularly because Eugene Lee had gotten Performer of the Year for performing. Excuse me.
That's easy for you to say.
For performing it just 2 years before, the year before Montez had gotten it.
Right.
I'm like, that, they ain't gonna do that, So I wasn't thinking about it. So I'm like, wow, this is so cool. I'm so glad that I didn't commit suicide.
There's what you think.
Yeah.
I mean, you've had an impact. It's a little bit like It's a Wonderful Life.
Yes. It's a lot like it.
Well,
Only-
actually exactly like
Only
it.
it's real. Only it's real. I mean, I was able
You
to
were on a
see-
bridge over a frozen river just like in It's a Wonderful Life.
And you know what's crazy? This is what's really crazy. When I was standing on that bridge, contemplating jumping in, and I'm looking at the sheets of ice, all I could think of is Uncle Tom's Cabin. Right?
Yeah.
Eliza running across the Ohio River,
Yeah.
on the sheets of ice. This is what I'm thinking about. I'm like, I don't want to die. Those are not the thoughts of somebody who
No,
wants
and
to die.
the world is quite glad that you did not.
Oh, man, nobody's more glad than me.
I bet.
Even with the trials and tribulations that I had suffered since then, it's all part of it.
Well, if you have a little pain in your life, it means you're alive,
yeah,
right?
yes.
So you can thank your lucky stars that you do have a little bit of pain.
And there's so much
Or
that
trouble.
I've written. I've written so much. I mean,
Are you a playwright as well?
Oh yeah. I've written. I'm a one act wonder.
You like to do one act.
I've written some really good one acts that should be adapted to full length two act plays, and written a couple of one man shows, particularly about Martin Delaney.
Have you performed them?
Oh yeah. The first one I did was called Martin Delaney: The Pittsburgh Years. I was going to the Multicultural Arts Initiative to apply for a grant to do a play about this guy named Robert Smalls. He was
Why do I know that name?
he was a riverboat pilot pre-Civil War, and once the war broke out, the Confederacy had him piloting their ships for them, and he was such an incredible pilot in those sea islands. They're like the fjords of Norway.
Mm-hmm.
You could beach a ship easy and not know it, but he was really good. So they had him piloting General Roswell Ripley's flagship, and they would leave the ship, leave the slaves on board, and just confidently just go to town and get drunk. So Robert Smalls decided to put a plan together to steal this boat called the Planter. He knew all the signals past those sentry posts, past Fort Moultrie, Fort Jackson, all the rest of them, Sumter, and made it out to the Union blockade 7 miles off the coast and turned the ship in. They in turn commissioned him as a second lieutenant and put him back on the boat as the pilot. On a mission, they took on fire. The white captain ordered him to beach the ship and surrender, and he refused. He said, "You're going to go to Andersonville. We're going to go in the belly of hogs. No, we're not doing it. You don't want to fight, go hide." So they fought back. They made it out of there. He was ordered to see the adjutant, and when he went in there, instead of getting court-martialed, he got captain's bars. And he was the captain of that ship for the rest of the Civil War.
Wow.
He was the highest-ranking black man to serve throughout the entire Civil War.
That's a great story.
Because he was a captain. The captain
That should be a movie.
It should. And I wrote a play, and it reads like a movie. There's so many characters, and it covers so much ground. But while going there to the Multicultural Arts Initiative at PPG Place, I noticed the historic landmark for Martin Delaney. And I looked at that and I said, "There's a black doctor. He's a major in the Civil War. He had the first black newspaper, wasn't he?" Again, like, whoa. So I was really like enthusiastic about doing this thing about Robert Smalls from South Carolina, but then there's this thing about this guy from Pittsburgh. I'm like, oh wow. So I wrote this thing called Martin Delaney: The Pittsburgh Years. And it covered the years that he was born, raised in Virginia, and then Chambersburg, PA, and then he came here in 1831. The same time Nat Turner had his insurrection. He's traveling alone right along the Mason-Dixon line, right along the Mason-Dixon line. So he got here, he met with these educators at the Bethel AME Church, which is still in existence today. And he apprenticed for local doctors here and built up a stack of papers. By 1850, he attended Harvard, and he was accepted into the Harvard Medical School by Dr. Oliver Wendell Holmes, Sr.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's another movie.
Yeah. I mean, just that in itself. And
those two stories are phenomenal.
But leading up to that, he had the very first black newspaper west of the Alleghenies called The Mystery, where his newspaper had the only eyewitness account of the Great Fire of 1845. He was a doctor who tended the sick during 2 cholera epidemics. And his newspaper wound up losing his newspaper because he got sued for libel by a black man who would help kidnap black people and have them sold into slavery. And the judge was a Southern sympathizer and awarded this man, Thomas Fiddler Johnson, $200, which bankrupted Martin's newspaper. Shortly after that, a knock came at Martin Delaney's door. His wife opened it up. It was Frederick Douglass standing there.
No.
Asked him to lend his expertise to him to start his new newspaper, the North Star.
Wow.
Yeah. He came here to Pittsburgh. In Market Square, there is that circle in the middle of the square.
Yes.
There's a plate that was put there by the Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership that shows you the celestial area in which from that spot you can see the North Star.
Sure.
Yeah, in the northern sky during June. And I even, I'll set up right there every now and then and just talk to people, put my 1850 frock and waistcoat on and my top hat and go over there and talk to people. I live right next to it. And I had done a play at the August Wilson Center to celebrate Martin Delaney's 200th birthday.
Did you write it?
In 2012, it was his 200th birthday. And I got the grant, and I was able to have our last show on his actual birthday,
Really?
May 6, 2012, which Councilwoman Natalia Rudiak at the time had recognized this and had got a city proclamation made, making that day of our last show Martin Delaney Day in Pittsburgh. So I have the proclamation on my wall, and it's just another one of those really extremely proud moments.
Well, I believe that you have 2 or 3 really powerful things you could absolutely turn into something that the world needs and wants and would do very well. And you can see some phenomenal actors playing in that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Those are star parts.
Oh, my goodness.
Those are star parts.
Steve, there's this book that Martin Delaney had published in 1852. It's called The Condition, Elevation, Immigration, and Destiny of the Colored People of the United States Politically Considered. And
Can you say that 10 times fast?
No. But we don't have time.
No, we don't.
But the book is the most amazing American book I've ever looked at, because it's partially a history book. It talks about it itemizes by chapters black men and women of the time and previous who were free, born free, and productive citizens of the United States. One chapter is just soldiers. The chapter is called Colored Warriors. Another chapter is Farmers and Herdsmen. Another one is Doctors. So many black doctors. There were so many free people who did. I mean, the average person walking around today thinks that prior to 1865, every black person in America was a slave.
But not true.
Not true. And I mean, they're walking around with college degrees and high school diplomas.
Especially north of the Mason-Dixon
because they weren't taught it.
Right.
They weren't taught it.
Sure.
I mean, hardly anybody knows anything about the 19th century because of how much slavery impacted that century.
Sure.
And my thing is history's Flipside, and I have a channel on YouTube, and I already started. What my plan is to do each chapter from that book, The Condition, as I shortened it. Each chapter will be it will be a separate vlog. Each chapter would be a separate video where I'll break down into, like, the first chapter. It just talks strictly about how class oppression and slavery works. I mean,
how many of these have you done? Have you done any?
Just the preface and the chapter.
And
the first chapter.
And how long are they?
It's 23 chapters, and some chapters will be only 10 minutes. Other chapters will be like 20 pages.
Are they scripted and performed, or are you just narrating them? Or
I'm going to narrate. I'm going to do a book on audio, and from the book on audio, I will make the videos where I will put a certain passage from a chapter to a certain point, and then I'll stop and I'll come in and like, okay, now let me break this down for you guys. Okay, now back in, because there's so many words that people don't use, and spellings like the word connection back then was accepted to spell it Connexion.
Xion.
Yes, it's Edwardian, speech and writing, and that in itself is just so archaic and interesting, that it's gold. I mean, there are so many people in this book that you wouldn't believe.
You're going to publish a book with it?
Yes, I'm going to publish the book, the audio book, and then do the chapters individually on YouTube and PCTV.
Well,
I'm a producer. I've been a producer over there since '98.
Is that right?
That was another thing that I did to get over the depression, and the one thing to, leave the earth. I'm like, just get involved in stuff.
PCTV, for those who don't know, is a community television studio.
Yep. Pittsburgh Community TV, Channel 21 on your Comcast.
But not in Los Angeles.
Right. It's Verizon. It's 47
it's
on
local.
Verizon. Yeah.
It's mostly local.
Yeah.
So, Wally, we have been talking for 90 minutes, believe it or not.
It doesn't feel like it. It really doesn't.
So I'm going to come to the famous last two questions.
Okay.
This has been just a marvelous 90 minutes of just great stuff.
It's fun for me too.
So you I'm certain that you've worked with a ton of people in the business, and do you have a story that you can tell us, or two, of something that's oddball or quirky or funny or offbeat or weird that happened to you?
Well, it goes in with like with the people that I've worked with. One of the most incredible actors I've ever worked with is a gentleman named Sam Chuchevas.
Okay.
And I met him doing my first show at City Theater. It was called Work Song, and he played Frank Lloyd Wright. And it was a 3-act play. I played 2 roles. One of the roles was this guy named Julian Carlton, who, when Frank Lloyd Wright lived in Taliesin in Wisconsin, he was out of town, and this guy had, George Brodell had fired my character, and very disgruntled, he chopped everybody up with an axe and burnt the house down.
Yo.
Yeah, and so it was one of the most incredible roles I ever played, and
you didn't get booed for that one?
Well, people just stayed away from me, like receptions after the show and this and that. People just like, yee. But the funny, quirky story that's coming from that is that I was really down on my luck at that time, and that pay from City Theater was just a godsend, and I was able to get myself a new phone, got myself a new Cricket. This was 2004, and I had done all my scenes, and I had called a friend of mine, and I was leaving her a message, and somebody said, "Wally, it's about the curtain call. It's about to be curtain call. Let's go." And I put the cell phone in my pocket. And I went out there, and when we were out there on the stage in the curtain call, the phone went off. It went off, and Sam never let me. I'm about to do a Sherlock Holmes play with he and David Whalen.
Yes.
Called Sherlock Holmes and the Speckled Band.
Yeah.
And we're going to do that in June. And
is that for Kinetic?
No, it's going to be here. At the Stephen Foster.
Is that right?
Yep. Sherlock Holmes and the Speckled Band with the David Whalen playing Sherlock.
Yes.
And I'm hoping Marty Giles will be playing Watson. I'll be playing a man named Armitage. And I own the big shop in the square in the village. And so I'll be able to do another English accent, but that was the quirky one. That was the embarrassing one.
You actually had a phone go off in your pocket.
Yeah, man. And I don't let me live that one down. I mean, that was just.
Did you have a little egg on your face that night?
I had an
omelet.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I had a Western omelet on my face. It was I was just never so embarrassed in theater.
But you've never gone on stage with your fly down.
Yes, I have.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, I have. I've had that.
Do you have nightmares of things happening on stage?
No, I just laugh. I
laugh.
just laugh about
You know,
it.
at the end of the day,
I cringe a little.
at the end of the day, Wally, it's still just a play in
Right.
show business, and it may have massive impact on people, but it's still just a bit of entertainment.
I can't stand to see actors torture themselves over making a mistake and this and that. I'm like, come on,
Move along.
You're not gonna get hung. You know, they put the guillotine away. It's all right. You're not gonna die.
And by the way, everybody makes mistakes.
Everybody.
Everybody.
I tell everybody, I was like, look, if you're expecting perfect from me, you're just going to have to settle for excellent. Just going to have to settle for excellent.
A
man.
good line. I like that line. All right, so what's the best piece of advice you can offer to those who are just starting out in the business, or perhaps those that are in a little bit but trying to get to that next level and get to where they're getting decent roles and so on?
I would say that if you really, really want to do this, don't concern yourself with money right now.
It's not about the money.
No, it's about doing the show. I did the full Monty with Stage 62. And anybody that knows that show, you got to get naked.
Yes.
I did that show for no money.
Really?
No money. And I had done that show coming off of doing a full run at the Pittsburgh Public Theater. See, because there's a karmic thing that exists. I don't know if it exists anywhere else, but I know it exists in theater. And when you do a dog show, but somebody really needed you to do it,
it gets paid back.
Yes, it comes back. It will.
That's true for, I think, my belief is that's true for all of life. When you put it out, it comes back, sometimes double or triple.
Don't look for it.
No.
Don't look for it.
You just do the right thing.
Yeah, you do it and you keep working, you stay busy, and you look to grow as a person and an artist. I am always learning something new. I'm learning card tricks. I'm about to take piano.
Are you going to be doing magic in a show?
I don't know.
You just learn it.
I don't
just
know.
Just for fun.
I all my life I learned how to twirl a pistol, you know, like a cowboy.
Yes.
Like a gunslinger. Sure. I do all that, man, you know, every kind of way. And I put it right into that holster.
Someday you shall do something where
exactly.
you need that.
And next thing you know, I got a role. I played Caesar in Gem of the Ocean. And I thought to myself, would it be out of character to do the gunslinging thing? How can whatever choice? That's another thing that I'll leave an actor with. Whatever choice that you make in whatever role you play, make sure you can justify it with the director that it is supported by the script.
Oh,
that you
great.
Make the argument that it is supported by the script. Now, my choice to do the gunslinging thing as Caesar, I was supported by the notion that I knew August Wilson loved Westerns.
Ah.
And in 1904, the most popular form of entertainment was the dime store novel. And the dime store novel, this was pre-gangster, so it was cowboy. Geronimo was still running around in 1904. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I'm like, boom. I could see Caesar sitting there reading his dime store novel, going down and buying him a new rig, you know, a new 45 or what have you. And Mark Southers hooked me up with this. It was a Navy 45 revolver with all the tooling and the ornate. Oh, man, it was just a beautiful pistol.
And did you twirl it?
I did because he had me.
Did it get applause?
Yes. Well, this is what it didn't get applause because my character was not very likable. Because my first line coming in there, my first line coming in is, "These niggas going crazy." That's my first line. In August, he really knows how to make an entrance for somebody. But Mark And he and I, we had went back and forth about this at first, because when I go into Aunt Esther's house, Mark says, I want you to give him your gun. I'm like, Caesar wouldn't give up his gun. You know, he's like, I just need you to do it. I'm like, all right. So once I agreed to do it, that's when my brain went into justifying it for him, for the director's choice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, let me make sense, because it's got to make sense for me, the person that's doing it.
It must.
You know, so if I can't do it the way I want to, I got to make sense out of the way he wants me to do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's the job. And so I found a way to do some flourish with the gun, with giving it to him. There was this movie called Payback with Mel Gibson.
Yes.
And he goes into this pawn shop to sell his gun because he's out of money.
Yes.
And the pawnbroker's like, and so Mel Gibson, he's holding, he's like, oh, yeah. So he flips it in his hand and hands it to the pawnbroker. So I learned how to do that. You know, so when it was time for me to give Kevin Brown, Eli, the gun, I'm like, I looked at him up and down like, so I pulled out the gun and I flipped it and handed it to him. And I didn't tell him I was going to do it the first time I did it. He's like, oh. I was like, yeah. So
the lesson is do things that, without being paid for them,
mm-hmm.
do them because they appeal to you in some way, or some way it touches you in some way.
Yeah.
And that may someday turn into a karmic benefit.
Oh, definitely. Another play that, I mean, it was a full-blown play for a month that I didn't get paid for, and it was The Civil War, another one with Stage 62.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't pay. But I'm playing Frederick Douglass, and I'm singing as Frederick Douglass. And I have 3 slaves backing me up like my personal pips to my Gladys. And I'm singing this song that was originally recorded by Darius Rucker, Hootie. You know, this song really kicked ass. You know, it's called Freedom's Child.
Mm-hmm.
And in addition to my backup singers, a choir of 30 backing me. I grew an afro, man. Took me a year to grow that fro because they got me that much time because they saw me doing Parade.
Mm-hmm.
I was in Parade with Back Porch and Stephen Santa.
Front Porch.
Front Porch, yeah. I was thinking Back Porch Society. There's a play that I just left here.
I've had Leon, Nancy, and Bruce on the show.
Oh, they are such awesome people. Bruce, oh yeah, and Nancy and Leon. And while they were watching me as Newt Lee, Stephen Santa was up there. He's like, there's my Frederick Douglass right there.
Mm-hmm.
So each gig can lead to another one.
There's no question. I think it's all a linked chain. Your life is a linked chain, and one link leads to another bit of that chain.
Yeah.
And you must attend to that by just doing.
Right. And you won't do it unless you know it's a chain.
That's true.
Unless you know it is.
That's true. And I think as long as you're not hurting anyone else or yourself, and you can weather that storm, whatever that storm is, in the sense you're saying it's do it for free.
Yeah.
Well, you're not going to have a little bit of money this week or this month or whatever it is. That is a good thing to do.
And don't compete for a part.
That's 100% true. Don't compete for a part. If it's yours, it's yours. If it's not yours, it's not going to be yours.
You're wasting your time where the part that is yours is waiting for you elsewhere.
I hate to say it, but it's the same way with relationships.
Yeah.
If someone doesn't want to be with you, why fight that?
Yeah.
You know, or if it's not working, it's not working. It shouldn't be the end of the world.
You're holding each other back from that special person who is for you.
That's correct. Wally, this has been a spectacular show.
Oh, thank you.
I'm so glad you came in to spend some time on StoryBeat today, and I look forward to seeing all your work coming forward.
Oh, awesome, man. Thank you.
And so we've come to the end of today's StoryBeat. If you like this podcast, please take a moment to give us a comment, rating, or review on whatever app or platform you're listening to. Your support helps us bring more great episodes to you. This podcast would not have been possible without the generous support of the Center for Media Innovation on the campus of Point Park University. Until next time, I'm Steve Cuden, And may all your stories be unforgettable.